How did you get over the embarrassment of being the crazy ex? Did you ever make amends with that, or did you completely cut ties? I like to think back on a shower thoughts that was posted on Reddit once. If you don't look back at your past self and cringe, then you didn't grow as a person. Maybe I made some incorrect choices and cold handled myself better, but I know how to do better going forward. I'm now at the point where I'm letting go of the cringe. Yes, I messed up. Yes, I learned. Showing myself the same understanding that I naturally show other people. Not judging. Self-compassion. Gosh, I need to do this. I'm seriously cringing about how I was in my late teens/early 20s and now I'm like, how was I so stupid and totally obsessing over it? I never apologized for it as I felt it'd just make things worse, and it's best I simply just cut ties completely. Not going to lie, I cringe every time I think back of things I've said and done. Honestly, they were rarely harmful, rather than sad and pathetic. I have one moment I wish I could take back. I was with a terrible guy. He was super manipulative, would tell me I'm going to kill myself because of you. Cheated on me with multiple other women and just overall brought me to a level of crazy I have never been before or since. Now, the crazy thing I did, it actually wasn't super crazy. I made a fake Facebook profile to send him poopy messages after he blocked me before we finally broke up. I only did it that once, and we exchanged maybe 4 messages before I deleted it. I just so badly wanted him to know he was the worst. Not a proud moment, and I'm happy to say I've never done something like that again, but I'm sure when he tells the story it's a very different version. I relate to this lol. My ex was really manipulative. Used to lie to me constantly and even assaulted me frequently. We broke up for unrelated reasons, and I only realized he was toxic once I was away from him. As a result, I hadn't gotten to say my piece, to tell him how he had hurt me, how it was wrong, etc. I tweeted something about not being thankful for my ex, like Eri lol, and his friend saw it and sent it to him. So he texted me saying he wanted to know what he has done that was supposedly so bad. Well, I had written 10 pages on my laptop a few weeks prior just trying to vent about all the things he had done, detailing all his lies plus times he had disrespected me, etc. Of course this had a pretty nasty tone to it, since I was very upset. So like, I just sent him it and then blocked him on everything, so I have no idea what the response was. I go back and forth with how I feel about this. On the one hand, I'm glad I got to say it. Maybe he would read and learn from it somehow and not do it to anyone else. On the other hand, I'm sure he would have just dismissed it as me being a crazy ex. It was petty, and probably not the most mature thing I could have done. I just wanted him to know I hated him, I guess. Never done anything like that before or since. Thankfully I haven't been in a situation where that would have even been considered. My ex liked me to behave like a crazy, clingy person. I think it made him think he was more desirable, so he would purposely make me upset and act out, especially after we broke up. I used to apologize for my behavior, but never got one back. I eventually cut ties and now have a much healthier relationship with my new partner. Sometimes I can feel me wanting to act out, but I realize that that's not normal or what he wants from me. I've become a lot more calm and communicative. Came here to say this. Definitely not the case all the time, but pretty sure my ex refers to me as crazy. Funny how I'm not crazy now that I'm with a man who doesn't lie to me and gaslight me. When I realized that I wasn't actually the crazy ex, but just the latest in a long line of women deliberately driven to the edge by a toxic and manipulative man who got off on it. When that happened, my self-esteem grew, my standards rocketed, and I was altogether much happier. Edit. Wow. This went bigger than I could have thought. It makes me sad to see that my comment has resonated with so many people. Glad that so many of you were able to see the truth of your situation and begin the healing process, and hopeful that perhaps someone out there who is currently struggling might begin to have some clarity and the courage to begin their own journey. Thank you all for sharing, caring and being amazing XX. The guy never to my knowledge described me as the crazy ex. But I definitely was. I was in a bad state mentally, and he wasn't equipped to deal with it. We were both far too young. I was extremely jealous and controlling. Not out of maliciousness, But because I didn't know how to deal with the fear of losing him in a healthy way, I spiraled completely out of control at some point, and actually was the one to leave him. I was later diagnosed with bipolar. Got the usual treatment at that time, and though it took me years to get back on my feet again, I eventually did. We are on friendly terms today, not really in touch though, but our parents formed a friendship back then, so we run into each other from time to time. We are both happily married to someone else now. I'm sorry for what I made him go through. I'm sure it left some scars. I want to apologize, but I never got any signals from him that he would be interested in it having a chat that would make this possible. It's not on me to impose myself on him, just so that I can get a bit of relief from the weight of the knowledge that I hurt him. It took me a long time. It's decades ago when this all happened, but I have forgiven myself for it. I was young and completely overwhelmed and deeply wounded myself. I know that I overcame what drove me to my behavior back then, and that I'm a different person today. That helps to get over not the embarrassment, but guilt that I feel. I would enjoy being friends with him because we had a lot in common and had a lot of fun besides the intimate relationship. But he is not interested, and I respect and accept that. When my very first boyfriend dumped me in high school, I was absolutely insane and still cringe when I think about it. The best thing you can do, in my opinion, is identify the things you did that weren't super chill. Make a pact with yourself to be aware of those behaviors in the future. Take a step back when those spidey senses tingle, and remember you're a human who makes mistakes. Nobody has a perfect track record, and if it helps, know that after a couple years they probably aren't thinking about it anymore. Just try to treat that person how you'd like to be treated in the same situation. When my ex-boyfriend started dating someone else, he accused me of being the crazy ex that cheated on him with two particular people, just my two male friends. Little did he know his girlfriend would end up meeting my two friends. Little did he know she'd ask them about it, and both denied anything ever happening. Of course it hurt me that some people thought that I was a raging cheating person. However, my best advice is when someone's nasty to you like that, you just got to sit back and let karma sort them out. Over time, I realized that my actions were not crazy, but rather a pretty common way a young, inexperienced girl handles relationship stress. I had a boyfriend who would cheat on me, but if I ever voiced concern, he would lose his composure and blame my crazy pestering for him anger. When we later broke up and my self-esteem took a header, I probably fit the profile for crazy ex-girlfriend. Even if I felt more depressed than crazy, I had another boyfriend who I really didn't jive with, and our breakup, initiated by me, was pretty drawn out and poopy because I thought it was the easiest way to let someone go. But he still called me a crazy loser who didn't know what she wanted. I met my now husband at 21 and were married with a child 9 years later. I think that's just it. I was under 21 in those other relationships. All my friends were around the same age and had similar experience levels. And you don't know what you don't know. I would have handled those situations much differently at 30. So I try to be forgiving of my young self because she really didn't know any better. I became the crazy ex when I was dating a guy that worked at the same company as me. First mistake. He always talked about his crazy ex and kept his personal life very private. After about a year I realized that his crazy ex was actually also his current girlfriend, and the friend he was staying with actually meant that he was living with she and her parents. He would take me hiking with their family dog, saying he was dog sitting. I started to get a little crazy, wanting answers and needing to understand the full story. I hit full on crazy when I found out my entire company knew, and everyone purposely didn't tell me or my closest work friend who could have passed on the information to me. I still feel embarrassed about things I said and did, but have to remind myself that he was a seriously manipulative person and still won't own up to his toxic behavior. I wasn't the problem, he was. I've learned to give myself the grace and understanding that I was young and didn't know any better, and I had to learn those lessons in order to be better. I also try to accept the hard truth that not everyone will have good memories of me the same way I do with other people, and that's completely normal. I have been painted as the crazy ex by one guy He has also painted every other of his exes as the crazy ex too. I very sadly and stupidly believed his take on things when we were together. Whereas now I have a bit more of an understanding of how his behavior can make people go mad. His current girlfriend is an old friend of mine, and unfortunately I have had to cut ties with both of them when they were secretly seeing each other. A month after he told me it was over with me, he came on to me, as I didn't know that they were together, and as she was my friend, I told her all about it. He said I was making it up, and painted me as crazy and obsessed to cover his tracks. And to be honest, he is so plausible, and his mixed messages and lies had by that point made me a little crazy, that I don't blame her. He had the same act with me before leaving his last crazy ex. She is never going to believe me whilst she is with him, so I have cut ties. As someone who is 100% at fault for doing things that lead me to that title for some people, I'm finally just trying to focus on improving so I don't repeat it again. I think getting over the embarrassment of it wasn't directly tied to this, but more that I've been working hard to not dwell on that feeling, but to channel it into changing my actions or situation. I think feeling it in the immediate aftermath is good. It lets my brain know that I shouldn't do that again, but it doesn't help me to hold on to it. Now, I suppose it's different if your ex-partner has convinced you that you've been crazy when you haven't really been though. Strangely enough, my craziest moments were with an ex who wasn't abusive, but he was incredibly neglectful. There was something about the disparity in effort I was putting in with his, and the sacrifices I had made for the relationship, that drove me absolutely wild with crazy. The way I got over it was by really focusing on making myself a better person, and never behaving that way again, which I certainly don't with my current partner. I've learned much better communication and actively try to improve myself, which just last night a close friend commended me for. So I guess I'm over the whole being crazy. I'd love to speak to my ex to make amends GBH, but has ignored my attempts at contact. While I understand that I hurt him post breakup, I don't think ignoring me is what I deserve after the neglect that caused me to behave as such. Oh well, hatter onwards and upwards. Are you me? This is pretty much exactly a relationship I had. To be fair to my ex, he was open about the fact that he didn't want a long-term relationship, but I was young and very naive and quite taken in by his looks and personal charisma. I put a ton of effort into the relationship, and it made me insanely upset how he wasn't really trying very hard or taking us very seriously. In the end he blocked me, which I view as both a good thing because he frankly did not deserve the effort I put into him, and a bad thing because we were close and I did feel the loss of the friendship, and also because being suddenly blocked out of the blue really intensified my crazy for a while. In the end I now have a loving fiance to whom I'm very rarely crazy, and several other exes to whom I still get along pretty well with. I can really only conclude that it was just this guy for whatever reason. I didn't have a problem with being the crazy ex when 1. My first boyfriend cheated on me, 2. The second one admitted he was still in love with his ex and that I was a rebound, and 3. The third started acting like his dumping me out of the blue was totally alright and was okay with cutting all ties with me when we had been best friends for 4 years up until then. I agree with the others here who say that probably it's not just you. When I started acting crazy, I thought, well, at least someone cares enough to be crazy. But then I cut all ties because I felt I was being an asshole. In hindsight, I wasn't the bigger asshole. Maybe the third ex had some hidden reason he wasn't telling me about, and I can still give him the benefit of doubt. But I think the other two were definitely bigger assholes. After severing ties, I dealt with my craziness on my own and cured myself. My exes don't know if I've changed or not, but I know I've changed a lot. That matters more to me, since those days of being crazy and being labeled that by my exes and their friends, and even my friends, upset me a lot, and I genuinely thought I was a horrible person. The realization that I wasn't the only one to blame, and that I'm not the same person anymore, and that I will react more maturely in the future if something like those things ever happened again makes me content, and that's all the validation I need. Finally, my moment to shine. I have definitely been the crazy ex before, Probably more than once to varying degrees. But my most recent relationship sticks out the most. It might be objectively mild compared to some other people's idea of what makes a crazy ex. But when I look back I feel embarrassment about how I showed up. I look back and see that I used dating this person as a coping mechanism to avoid some of the things I was dealing with. I was attached very early on. Got clingy when he sent signals about slowing things down. I overgifted and just generally did the most for me when things ended. And I could see that I was doing the same things I did in many of my past relationships. I had heard of Six and Love Addicts Anonymous and took a look of the quick survey to see if I might fit. And lo and behold I did. Long story short, I joined the program. And it's been really helpful in terms of me breaking out of these habits and figuring out what lay at the roots of them. And as with most 12-step programs, I did end up making amends to this most recent ex. It was actually super humbling because we only dated for a short while and I made the amends a much longer time later. The fact that he thought I was trying to use the amends to get back with him kinda reminded me of just how crazy I came off in the relationship, that he would think that of me. My default was to fall back into self-loathing and embarrassment. But through spending months working on myself and being surrounded by others who have also acted in similar ways, I began to see myself as a human who had made mistakes, shown up as not her best self. I'm able to have a lot more self-compassion for the ways I showed up in the past now. Sometimes a hint of embarrassment, but I can brush it off and move forward with confidence that I know how to move with more dignity now. Haha. Oh, I was the crazy ex. Early 20s. It was so embarrassing. It still affected my into my 30s. So many people saw how I acted, and I ended up getting a 10-year-long enemy out of it, who was friends with my ex. I kinda attacked her after she said mean stuff. I have now worked intensively with myself. I have done 2 intensive years of therapy for my BPD. I think I've met everyone that was directly around during the breakup and freak out, and I've had a casual conversation with them. I made up with my enemy. After meeting everyone, I don't think about what they think of me. I don't think about them spreading rumors about me. Most likely they didn't care enough to begin with, and if they did they cared less as the years passed. And after meeting me, significantly older, I think any disrespect or animosity disappeared. Now it's all very neutral. Thank God. I've come to realize that it wasn't that bad. I was young and insecure, and people forgive and forget, especially if you yourself grow and make amends. Not only was I the crazy ex, but the entire relationship was basically insane, toxic, and wild. I behaved crazily because it was crazy. I used to feel embarrassed thinking back on his cowhawkers that had a front seat to our madness. But then I realized I knew him and all his insanity. I could care less now. I've also had by some of them reach out and basically say, oh, shit, I'm sorry. Now I understand. It kind of messed with me when word got back around. But what made me actually paranoid when his new girlfriend added me and wanted to be friends. She got big mad and flipped out when I said I was uncomfortable with it / declined. And the way she approached it just seemed like an evil plot. Well, crazy or not, I did what I had to get away after he destroyed me mentally and physically, was into bigger women I found out later on, and was constantly on me about my weight, trying to make me eat, which hurt my sugar and weight badly, but embarrassed I was not. Besides, if people think I'm crazy, maybe that'll give the weak ones more reason to leave me the hell alone. Completely cut ties. Anyone saying anything completely untrue about you is most likely trying to cover their bad behavior, and any friends believing that ain't your friends. You have nothing to prove. You know the truth and those close to you do too. I have tried to prove things before, sometimes desperately, but in the end, just ended up with the same results as if I would have left it, or even worse than if I did, as the frantic effort to prove yourself ends up looking crazy. So now I'm older, I don't try so hard to prove anything as it's too much work and too heartbreaking, and I'd rather focus on the people that care for me. XX. I assume my exes, especially my most recent one, thinks I'm crazy. I worry about it, and sure, I do go a little crazy after a breakup. but it happens way more when the breakup involves not being heard, not letting me say my piece, or otherwise ghosting me, treating me like poop as a sure way to see how crazy I can be. Seems to me that crazy gets a bad rap, and it's the assholes who accuse others of being crazy, even when questioned about details, that are the actual crazy ones. Or in other words, I'm not crazy for feeling my feelings and speaking my mind about them. When I was 13, I had my first boyfriend. We broke up after 1 month. I was really sad. I loved him and I wanted to stay friend, but I couldn't see that I was bothering him. I still took the bus at the same time as him so that we could talk and go to school together. I was too clingy. One of my friends told me that he was bothered and that he would like me to stop bothering him. I was so embarrassed I cut ties completely and never talked to him again. Dude here. This is amazing question, and it is really enlightening to see a female perspective on this, as I've dealt with a crazy ex. I have been in both sides of this, being both the sane and the crazy partner. I will share my perspective and hopefully it's on point. I was the crazy ex, alcohol, and was verbally abusive. My ex is an incredibly nice and non-confrontational person. Once I got sober I tried to reconnect, and it took me time to realize she was just being nice to me when she would respond to my texts and calls. Trying to make amends was just opening old wounds and making it harder for her. So in my situation I just had to take a step back, realize if she needed closure, apology, or wanted to sort out why I acted the way I did toward her, she will ask when she is ready. I'll let her know I was available for this. As to getting over the embarrassment, it's 4 years later, and I'm still cringing at what I did to that beautiful woman. I'm not that person now, and I'm finally getting to the point that I can see myself in a positive light. Occasionally I take a step back and realize a difficult decision I made is an adult one, and that I'm not that childish but I was before. I look at the younger version of me as if she's a different person, and I forgive her. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's true. I was young and more emotionally volatile, and I was desperate for love and affection. It made me do some unreasonable things. One time, I showed up at my partner's work and hung out for hours, multiple days in a row, until his manager had to tell me to leave and not come back. I could, and have frequently, look at that and cringe. Or I could think, man, I'm sorry that you felt like you had to go to those lengths in order to be valued by someone. One day it won't feel so hard. I've learned from it, and I'm a wiser person now. We're all young and impetuous and crazy at some point in our lives. It's part of the human experience. So I don't blame younger me for that rite of passage anymore. My biggest crazy ex moments came after my divorce. I was married for most of my 20s and 30s. So suddenly being back in the world of dating was a shock. The trouble was, when I dated people who had a different attachment style, I tend more toward the anxious when my needs aren't getting met. And when I dated a few avoidant guys in a row, start out super strong, loving, then pull way back when you start expecting you're in a committed relationship. I would start to feel like I had a boyfriend after a few months, respond accordingly, then they would freak out and pull back. I would try to be cool and normal to them while stalking their social media and wailing to my best friends. The highlight is sitting drunk on my best friend's floor bawling my eyes out for like 2 solid weeks over a total dirtbag fuckboy. But were meant to be. Total cringe. I was called out by a guy who just decided to end a friendship just because his girlfriend said I was far too clingy. I had no idea he was in a serious relationship until he told me he would block me off Facebook. People in my family then called me that, the crazy ex. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.